We've been studying, practicing with Dogen's Genjo Koan, which is a fascicle. And Dogen is the founder of our lineage, 1200, around about in Japan. He uses lots of nature metaphors and analogies to try to help us wake up and live our lives from the place of what's really true. Maybe I shouldn't do this, but while you were all out there, hopefully walking and having great insights, I was in here thinking about the Wizard of Oz. so maybe I can do this as a metaphor and an analogy. I loved the Wizard of Oz when I was a kid. I was thinking, well, Dorothy's just going along, living her life, and all of a sudden something big happens and bumps her on the head. And then you don't know if she's in a dream or not in a dream. Just sort of like, I think what happens, something bumps us in the head of our lives, and it's not what we thought it was, but we don't know where we are anymore. And then what I always love, the yellow brick road and the way they like took hands and they went off down the road together is just, maybe that's what sanghas do. Maybe that's what we all think we're going off together to do, to figure out this life and to get it. And we make friends along the way, and all kinds of things happen, and some are good and some are bad. And then she got the red shoes. I always loved the red shoes. It's like you have to have some kind of payback. You know, it's like, if you're going to get this, it's like, if I was in this life for anything, I was here to be on the yellow brick road and to get the red shoes. I didn't know what it meant, but this was all pretty exciting. You can tell, maybe you can tell I really like this story. But in the very end, as I'm remembering it and retelling it, is that all she wanted to do, what she realized, is she just wanted to go home. And all of it, did it happen? Did it not happen? What's true? What's not true? Is in essence, what she just wanted to do was to go home to her own heart, which was love. And then just went back to a really ordinary life. Didn't have to be something. She didn't need her magical red shoes anymore. I mean, you could wear them, but she just wanted, it's like she just wanted to come home. So that's in his own way. Dogen didn't know about the Wizard of Oz. There's lots of folk tales in Japan, and a lot of Dogen's teachings, I think, and that we just don't know the Chinese and the Japanese and the Asian folk tales the way we know these kind of folk tales in our culture. But they're like stories to help us come home. And so he uses metaphors and analogies to do that. So having said that, I think this is one of the most, the Genjo Koan is so beautiful. I mean, really, just read it, take it outside, and don't just read it. It's like, just be with it, chant it. I'd really recommend it. And this is a really, it's verse 9. We're in verse 9. So I'll begin with, a fish swims in the ocean, and no matter how far it swims, there is no end to the water. A bird flies in the sky, and no matter how far it flies, there is no end to the air. However, the fish and the bird have never left their elements. We're going to talk about the first phrase here, and then we'll go on to the whole thing. And I'm going to do some commentary. We'll see how much time we have. Some commentary by Okamura Sensei, because his commentaries are always really lovely. And he's got a whole book. If you really get into this, I highly recommend his book on the Genjo Koan. So a fish swims in the water, and no matter how far it swims, there is no end to the water. You might, if you'd like, imagine we're the fish, and the ocean is our life or practice. And we just keep going. We just keep swimming, going on, and you just never come to the end of it. there's no final point. Well, you could say you'll die, that's the final point, but who knows what, who knows? We're just a fish in the water. Give yourself to the water, to your fishness. A bird flies in the sky, and no matter how far it flies, there is no end to the air. However, the fish and the bird have never left their elements. The fish could say, "Where's the water?" But the fish is always in the water. You can't have a fish without the water. Or a fish could say, "I want out of this water. Get me out of here." But there's no way for the fish to get out of the water, I mean, in the ultimate sense. So if the fish, whether it understands what water is or not, the fish is always completely interdependent with the water. You can't tease it apart. Having memories of, maybe that's what kids do when they take the fish out of the goldfish out of the goldfish bowl to see what happens if you try to take the fish out of the water. I remember doing things like that. The fish doesn't do so well. You take it out of its element. Human beings, or practice, is the same way. Suppose you could think you could take us out of it and see what happens. But we're always practicing, whether you think you're practicing or not. But once you know you're practicing, once you have a sense of intentionality of being here in this life, no matter what happens, there's no way to get out of it or any place else to go. Because like the water won't leave the fish alone, and the fish can't leave the water alone, completely interdependent. Your life is completely interdependent with practice, which is interdependent with everybody and everything. And things come along to remind you, because we do forget. But ultimately, there's no life other than realizing that we're all swimming in the same water together. And then I think that's where we come from in the womb, human beings. We're swimming. We're always swimming. And we're still swimming. Or the bird. I spent last night camping at Doran Beach, which I highly recommend. I've never done it. I go there all the time, but I've never camped there. To be able to be there at night and when the sun's going down and at the dawn and the flocks of birds and the whole sky illumined with birds. Where does it begin and where does it end? It's just, you just give yourself to it, and there's just nothing but wonder. Dogen says when their activity is large, their field is large. When their activity is small, when their activity is large, their field is large. When their need is small, their field is small. Lots of fishing boats out there last night. Salmon. Salmon. I mean, think about it. It's incomprehensible, the breadth and the depth and the distance of what salmon do in a lifetime. I can't even imagine. And then there's just these little critters on the beach. There was this morning, they looked like little tire treads. These little tiny beings that were obviously very busy going somewhere or living their lives completely, and then this little hole that they disappeared down to. So who's going to make the big field and the small field in a comparative sense? These beings, each totally covers its full range, and each totally experiences its own realm. Each is completely fulfilling its own Dharma position or life. And there's no gap. I mean, a salmon, we're the only species that can kind of compare in a way and think that, well, you're covering your range a lot better than I'm covering my range, or why is yours so big and mine so, I mean, we do this all the time in a million different ways. But everything is just coexisting. Dogen says if the bird leaves the air, it will die at once. If the fish leaves the water, it will die at once. Know that water is life and air is life, the fish is life and the bird is life. Life must be the bird and life must be the fish. You can't separate it out from life, and life can't be separated out from us. Which, if you're a human being and a bodhisattva with the intention to wake up with and for all beings, it's just practice. You can't separate yourself out from it. You can think you forget, but whatever you thought you forgot, that actually then becomes the motivation for practice. It's like you've already gone and done it, folks. It's like we went and got born, and then someplace along the way, like Dorothy, we got bumped in the head by something, and we decided that we were on some kind of a journey, and the more that you do it, the more you want to wake up, find out what's really going on here, and what's really important. And you notice your own suffering, and you notice the suffering of others. And how do we respond? And then all of life becomes the water and the air, and it all is the element in which we wake up with and for all beings. Because life and practice and love, God, whatever you want to call it, only can come to life through the particulars and through the moment. It's not abstract. It's us. It's this. It's the pelican. It's just like, wow, pelicans. Moves across the sky and with the sky and disappears. What was that? We are it and it is us. And then he ends this part of verse 9 with, you can go further. There is practice enlightenment which encompasses limited and unlimited life. This metaphor, the insects in the garden. The glasses you have on because of your cataracts. I always think of Suzuki Roshi saying something like, these aren't my glasses. The universe is just letting me use them right now. I mean, it's just true of everything. But we think, oh, these are my glasses or my eyes. And they, I mean, please take good care of everything. But what a mystery and a wonder. I was at the beach celebrating my sister, my middle sister's 70th birthday. How could my little sister be 70 years old? Of course, I'm much younger than her. We should understand. It's just like I looked and tried to imagine. It's like we grew up together. It's like we were swimming and flying in the same elements and we're still alive. The awareness that we can do this together and have birthday cakes, but it's like, what a mystery this whole thing is. And then I try to imagine, because I do that these days. Of course, I assume. I mean, the assumption always is that I'm still going to be alive and everybody else is going to die. What's it going to be like if I am alive and my little sister dies? And is she here and is she not here? And what happened to the water that we're swimming in? Because she can't go away. She's part of me and she's not out there. It just, once you start practicing in this way, it's just nothing but wonder and gratitude. So here's some of Okamura's commentary on all of this. He says, Even though Dogen does not use the word zazen, which is meditation, at all in the Genjo Koan, it is clear to me, Okamura, that this analogy is about our zazen practice, not excluding our day-to-day activities and the entire universe as our environment. Dogen discusses the nature of our zazen practice and how it forms the foundation of our attitude towards our whole lives. The water or the sky does not simply refer to an environment that is outside of ourselves. The water is not an external world, and it has no real boundaries. And no one can measure it. The virtue of zazen is like a fish swimming in the water of emptiness. There's no separation between the fish and the water and the earth or the air. So the longer I had done this practice and thought that zazen was this thing that I did, and in essence, zazen is this thing you had to do to belong to the Zen club. And if that's what the Zen club was doing, then that's what I would do, because I thought these were kind of cool people. Or, I mean, I had a million different reasons, but that was one of the reasons that I did it and why I kept coming back. And then more and more, you start to realize that this zazen is an amazing teaching that has been passed down. You just sit right down in the middle of everything. And everything sits right down in the middle of you. And you breathe in and out. And something happens and nothing happens. But there's some beautiful stability and spaciousness and openness. And then it more and more begins to sink in that this isn't just something you do on the cushion. It's another, in a sense, metaphor and analogy. Maybe Dorothy had the yellow brick road, and we have zazen. Is how do you live it? Is what is this thing that we're doing on the cushion? And how do we take this body, because it is a zazen body, that is a heart body that includes the whole world. And how do you move with it into the world? Which of course involves realizing how much you think it is you and the world out there, and something's happening or something isn't happening, or you like it or you don't like it, or you have a lot of thoughts and you have a lot of opinions going on, and the world is doing whatever we think it's doing, and usually we think it's doing it to us, or it doesn't have anything to do with us. But the more we just have this zazen heart, body, mind, something profoundly turns. And it's the same world, and it's completely different, because we know there's no separation. And we forget, and that's how we learn. But once we know the fish is the water, and the water is the fish, and the bird and the air, and everything is the entire universe, Okamura is going to say something, you can't help but care in a different way. There's some really deep tenderness. I was with somebody about this yesterday. Is to me more and more what feels like opens in me is, I would call it tenderness. Is just a tenderness about everything. Even a tenderness about my own anger, or all the awful things that that's happening, or that my little sister is 70 years old, and just everything feels so tender and so close. I mean, of course, that's when I'm in my when I am experiencing a larger heart, body, mind, and there's a me I'm aware of experiencing something. But tenderness it's a whole lot easier to live when you feel distance from the world and yourself, right? I mean, it's an incredible defense. But it's a little scary, or we think it's scary if we're going to live like this. But in the end, it's like, what else are you going to do? So more and more, you just come home. So Okamura goes on, what is the sky? The sky is never concealed or revealed, and that the sky that is never concealed or revealed and that has neither outside or inside is the infinite vast sky. This sky is not space outside us. The sky and the bird are one without separation. We are completely part of the sky, and the sky is inside us too. It means simply being here. When we live, the entire universe is living with us. The fish and the water and the bird and the sky, all living beings in the universe are completely one. And when we sit zazen and let go of our discriminate thoughts, we are completely one with the whole universe. Maybe you had a little taste of that during Kinhin. You can keep doing that throughout your day forever. So we think we're separate, we make choices based on that, but what if we just keep coming back and letting the whole world come forward and touch us and breathe in and out and let choice arise from this heart, body, mind, which will more and more create the world that is already true and the world that we are hoping we can all enliven and make true for this human being, for the next generation and the generation and the generation before and across time and space. This total reality in which each and everything exists within the network of all beings is what Dogen wants to show us. We're right in the center. It's Indra's net. Everything is right in the center. Our body and mind are much larger than we usually think. And our life has much more intimate connection with all things than we can imagine. We share the same DNA structure with all living things on Earth. And this is what a bodhisattva knows. It's how small we are and how interconnected we are. No matter how tiny we are flying the entire sky, and the entire sky is flying with us. We cannot live separated from the world. This world is our life. And so we have to take care of this life, and we have to take care of this world, and self and others. And how can we live our lives with such a magnanimous view of the self and others and the world? That's the question and the vow of a bodhisattva. And that's why we have Sangha, and that's why we have teachers, and that's why we sit down together. Because if we're honest, we're enormously distractible. And we want what we want, and we don't want what we don't want. And that's not going to go away. You're not going to get over yourself. But we can land right in the center of the self, along with all beings, and know that the whole self is so much bigger than we could even imagine, and that we're just a tiny, tiny grain of sand. Okay, this is the last of Okamura. It's the last. I mean, he goes on and on too. In Buddhism, the reality of all beings, the Dharma, is the way we should study and the way we should live. One of the problems for us human beings is that we usually don't think the world in which we are living is our life. We think our life is only this body and mind as individual, and it continues only between the date of our birth and the date of our death. We think that all other people and things are the materials we can use to make us meaningful, happy, and satisfied. So we other and thing the world. And that's called suffering. But then you notice suffering, and that's good. First noble truth, there's suffering. There's a cause of suffering. It's because there's a self, and we completely wrap ourselves around the self and get all entangled. And there's a path to wake up. and how we live and our actions of body, speech, and mind, and zazen body. So easy. I mean, I don't know where it's easy for you, but it's easier for me when I'm at the ocean, the lights changing, the sound of the surf, fire, all the people I love. In the morning, I can hear the seals out of rocks. It's like the world gets so big. The moon. It's like I don't have a hard time imagining this or even being this. But I also know how quick the windows and doors can close. And then you're just back in this little tiny world where you're going round and round in circles, and we know what that is. But that's it too. It's like breathe in and out with and for the whole world, and be grateful that I have, and I think most of us have a life where we can access this kind of safety and room to know how big and beautiful and interconnected everything is, to have a taste of it. I know that there are people right now in circumstances where they are, due to causes and conditions, back into very small, tight places, and that there's infinite room there too. But you know what? Let's live our lives and breathe with and for them too, because we are them and they are us. So I wanted to, because I'd sort of promised that I would bring forward Indigenous and peoples of colored wisdom, so we don't just think that this is Zen or Dogen or just the Genjo Koan. And Christine sent me, thank you very, very much, Richard Magamis, I don't know if I'm saying it right, Embers, one Jiwa's meditations. He's part of the First Nations of Northwest Ontario, and he says this is living wisdom, just like the Genjo Koan is living wisdom, just like your wisdom is living, all wisdom is living wisdom. It says at the back, bring these words into your life, feel them, sit with them, and use them. I would say the same with the Genjo Koan. But here's, when I went through, I found a couple of things that feel to me that might help illuminate his wisdom and the Genjo Koan's wisdom. I'm going to send you off to find out what all this means to you. He says, I want to listen deeply enough that I hear everything and nothing at the same time, and am made more by the enduring quality of my silence. I want to question deeply enough that I am made more, not by the answers so much as my desire to continue asking questions. I want to speak deeply enough that I am made more by the articulation of my truth shifting into the day's shape. In this way, listening, pondering, and sharing become my connection to the oneness of life, and there is no longer any part of me in exile. No longer any part of me in exile. Here's a little dialogue. Me. Sorry, my phone's going up. There it is. Me. Could be me, could be any of us. Maybe this is the question I'll send you out with, because it might be your question. It hasn't been your question, I'm amazed, but you would maybe have a different language. Why am I alive? The old woman. Because everything else is. Me. No, I mean the purpose. And the old woman says, that is the purpose, to learn about your relatives. Me, my family? Old woman. Yes. The moon, stars, rocks, trees, plants, water, insects, birds, mammals, your whole family. Learn about that relationship, how you're moving through time and space together. How you're moving through time and space together. That's why you're alive. Me. What does it mean to believe? Old woman. It means to trust with your whole heart, to have faith. It means to have courage to act out of your belief. How do I do that? You have to be honest. What do you mean? You have to live your belief every day. To believe in something and not live it is dishonest. He says, I became a better human being after that. This is not just philosophical chomping on words. Live it. This is lived truth. And one last one. What is the point of prayer and meditation? The old woman. To bring you closer to the great mystery. So I can understand it? No, says the old woman. So you can participate in it. I grew up spiritually after that. That's nice. It's so nice to know that nobody's got some corner on wisdom and truth, just different expressions of it, but it's in the living of it. And we help each other. And that's amazing. Okay, so here's maybe